Okay, there we go. I guess we'll give this one more shot then. So we didn't
Yeah.
say that much.
Yeah,
Okay.
no worries.
I've never had that happen before. Welcome to Aural Hygiene. It's a podcast where we talk about educational films, experimental caught films, and interesting documentaries. This is Matt, and today we're talking about the film Kundun. I have a guest here who I did spit out your book titles a minute ago because I was cheating and looking at them on my computer screen, which is now crashed. So Christ, Consciousness, and Merkabah, but I forget the main title.
Yeah, the main title, the most recent book that I just published is a book 2 of the Buddhist Mandalas series, which is Buddhist Mandalas, Christ's Consciousness of a Multidimensional Merkabah. And the first book to the series is Buddhist Mandalas, Explore Parallel Realities with Sacred Geometry.
And that is Von Galt doing her own introduction. So hello and thanks for joining us today. Or me today. As you notice, I run solo on this one most of the time.
Yeah, you're Matt solo. You're Matt soloing it. Your sidekick is not in this one. He had, but this is gonna be fun. So it seems like I'm your Buddhist correspondent for Buddhism related movies.
Yeah. I try not to pigeonhole people too much, but
oh, I'm fine with that. I love Buddhism. I'm fine with that. So
like I said before, it's weird. I don't have like a formal Buddhist background. I just hang out at temples a lot, and it seems to have kind of worked itself out.
yeah, osmosis, just kind of osmosis, and that's kind of how you'd be surprised how much information you digest just through being in an environment.
Really, yeah. You realize, hey, I'm just going to listen to the birds for a while or something, and that probably is going to teach you as much as anything else. So,
yeah. Like I always say, you don't really learn anything new. You just recognize what you already know.
Right, but before I hit record, you actually gave like the perfect short summary of this movie. Could you do that one more time?
Yeah. So it's been a while since I watched Kundun. But basically, it's about the Dalai Lama's life story in terms of him being identified in Buddhism. We call them a Tulku child, like the modern vernacular for a high frequency person incarnating into this dimension. It would be something like star seeds, indigos, crystals, all of those pop culture concepts. But in Buddhism, we just wrap it all as Toku. So in the movie Kundun, the next Dalai Lama was projected to lead their tribe through various meditations and various methods that they use to locate this soul that is incarnating into Earth, that is the reincarnation or has inklings of their previous master teacher from their temple. And so they located him, and the movie is basically about him growing up, learning to lead the tribe, and then unfortunately he had to escape Tibet for India for asylum, and that's basically the movie.
I guess one bummer is this movie's 97, I think, and it's the same old situation now. So nothing has changed.
Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. And unfortunately, I don't, there's one of the hardest things in Buddhism for many people, even for many Buddhists to, even though they understand the concept of life lessons and certain things are set, for the spiritual and personal growth of the people involved, it's still really hard to accept people's tough life lessons. Just because we have so much empathy and compassion for people's suffering, that it's hard to witness people's suffering. But that is part of their journey that they have to learn and grow from so that they could do something about it. So
I don't know. I guess maybe it's alchemy, but looking back at the suffering, but looking back with fondness, maybe like, hey, actually, I did this during that time, and that was all pretty cool. So
yeah. In hindsight, it's always, if you can look at the struggles and the triumphs that you went through in your life to kind of see how far you've come, then that's the reward. So I
and
mean, yeah. And in terms of the movie Kundun, as a Buddhist watching it again, I've watched it when it first came out, a couple of times, but watching it again, in hindsight, when you look at, okay, so the Dalai Lama, the current one is Tenzin Gyatso, that the movie's based off of. But anyways, so if he would have stayed in Tibet, he would have kept the lineage of that tribe and the university. These monasteries are basically universities. They over time turn into monasteries, but they're basically learning schools, and they scribe all the knowledge that they learn about metaphysics and consciousness, energy healing, etc., into the canon. But if he would have stayed, he would have stayed, and they would have carried on the lineage. However, because of unfortunate circumstances with communism and China, um, it forced him to leave for asylum in India. And fast forward, at the time, it's like really sad in the movie because you're like, oh no, he's gone and there's no leadership and blah, 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 blah. But if you fast forward in hindsight and you look back, however you want to see it, it's the truth. The Dalai Lama has made a brand new, bigger and more robust environment in India, which now people all over the world can come to, and they can learn and they can explore, which they still can't do in Tibet, because there's a lot of red tape going into Tibet. So now everybody all over the world can come over to that. And not only that, the Dalai Lama is not just um, pinned to the temple, but he is exploring the whole world and spreading Buddhism and spreading compassion and mindfulness, writing books, doing audiobooks, visiting universities, promoting research into consciousness. And because of that, it's actually helped spread higher levels of consciousness all over the world instead of just being isolated in Tibet.
yeah,
So
exactly. I mean, he's basically on the even keel to a world leader now. So
which he doesn't like, which is why I respect him. He does not like being considered a world leader, does not like being considered even any kind of master teacher, any kind of those kind of um pedestal, because even in the movie when they asked the young Dalai Lama, what are you? Are you the Dalai Lama? Whatever he said, always, even in the last phase of the movie, he said, I am just a Buddha. Just one of
right.
many.
Well, that's why I
Okay.
chose my words by saying an even keel with, like
Yeah,
that
yeah,
level
yeah.
of prominence, not necessarily, his responsibilities are quite different, especially since he's not in Tibet. I mean, I guess in Tibet, he would have more of an actual leader role in that, temporal sense of the word.
Yeah, yeah. But now they have to lead the monastery in Tibet and the community in Tibet. They basically they lead themselves. So I'm not sure so much about how the leadership and how it's carried on and so forth. But maybe some point in the future when China gets this, because I have been watching the developments of the modernism of China for most of my life, and I have watched it go from the one-child policy to the two-child policy to now the three-child policy. So and they are transforming, and the hope is that someday in the near future they will be less totalitarian and less kind of control minded with the population. So because in my perspective, and I know there's no really true victims in Buddhism because we all pick and choose our pre-incarnations in terms of pre-life plan. And that's the whole thing that kind of goes into the concept of reincarnation in the movie Kundun, because the Dalai Lama is projected as a reincarnation of a previous high master teacher that led the tribe. So, um, but uh, I think that the Chinese people are the victims of the Chinese government, and that's just my opinion, because not everybody in the country agrees or supports the government, and there's a distinction between the people and the government.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, and so some people when they talk about China, they're like, oh, China this, China that, you need to rephrase it as the Chinese government, because the people do not necessarily like a lot of things going on, and they never have. But we will see how it evolves. So it's just kind of like in the movie Kundun, where we're watching the suffering and just kind of the push of the communist government coming into Tibet, taking over, not wanting to have their ancient sovereignty that they have had for so long. um, it's difficult to see. But then you fast forward 2, 3, 4 decades, and you see what has transpired since then. So, um, sometimes we have to kind of look at the big picture of it. So I don't
And
know what's going to be down the road for the country of China or the Chinese government, or what that's going to look like down the road. But I'm hopeful that it becomes something positive down the road. That
yeah, I should
these,
hope so. I mean, I
yeah.
guess with Tibet's sovereignty, I remember the 80s, looking at maps, looking at globes in school, and
Mm.
there's still like at least a dotted line there for Tibet. And I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that's gone.
Yeah, because for whatever, it's already a big country, but for whatever reason, they have to want to take sovereignty of this province. Like a
Exactly.
land grab. It's like a land grab. It's an ego-minded land grab. But they are still the same people, and they're just doing what they do, and they have been doing what they do for a long time, and you know, just recognize them as their own province, like a Native American reservation or something. They have their own nationhood. But for whatever reason, it has to be on paper. So all of this over trying to make it legitimate on paper, and I don't think it's necessary, all this violence and all this um back and forth. Just recognize it for what it always has been. It's its
Yeah,
own
really.
independent
But
sovereignty, just kind of like Israel and Palestine. Recognize Palestine as its own nationhood. It's the same exact thing. It's not worth all this blood and turmoil and all this angst just for
no,
a land
I mean,
grab.
and I'm sure there's like serious socio-political reasons, like, oh, we need to be like right up against India, but that's not thinking about people at all. Of course, it's just working out your geopolitics. So
Yeah, it's politicking. It's all it is. It's politicking. And it's ego. It's ego consciousness. And the ego consciousness is the only sin in Buddhism is really ignorance. It's really not knowing the full picture. And when you look at the full picture in the greater scheme of thing, it doesn't the whole point is just basically to take another province so you can get more taxes and more money. It's all money motivated.
now
You
you
go.
mentioned ego consciousness. Would what the serpent be the other side of that? I feel like they're
Ego,
usually paired.
yeah. Ego is not bad. Ego is your identity.
Oh, ego. I heard eagle, and I was thinking
Yeah,
ego. Got you. Okay, okay, of
ego, yeah, yeah.
course.
So it's your identity, and a lower consciousness identity is going to, see separatism, division. It's going to try to control, and then use a lot of different, childish games like manipulation, bullying, all that kind of stuff, force to get what it wants. And at the very end, when it gets what it wants, all it's going to get is, okay, so you got a land grab of the same people that live in the same spot, and they're still going to do what they do and practice the lifestyle they practice. So all of that just to have a land grab so that you can get more taxes. That's
Yeah.
what it's for, really.
Well,
I mean, sometimes you
the
gotta fast forward to the very end. I always do the fast forward technique. Let's fast forward to what you want, and then assess your treasures. What did you actually get as treasures for all of that?
well, again, they what is
Yeah.
it? I think it's once you're past something like 50 or 60,000, yearly income, like happiness does not increase at that point.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
as long as you
Yeah.
can cover your bases, you're basically as happy as you're going to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And the Dalai Lama wrote a book on it, The Art of Happiness, and it's basically that. It's basically just um, being present in the current moment, and then expressing yourself and enjoying every moment that you have in the in your existence, because this is the gift. The present is the present.
Yeah, one thing with this movie is I actually saw it on opening night because I'm a movie buff, and it's Martin
Hmm.
Scorsese directed, right? And I think coming out of the theater, I was like, I think this might be one of my favorite movies.
Really?
I was also like, it's
Oh.
boring. But I guess I can replace that with meditational.
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah. It
are
is
you
it's dry. It's dry.
are you
Um,
familiar with the film Koyaanisqatsi?
no, tell me about it.
Okay, there's actually three. It's called the Qatsi trilogy. It was made by, I think it was a former Catholic priest, and Philip
Mhm.
Glass did the soundtrack for these, just like Kundun.
Mhm.
Those movies are the complete documentary. Koyaanisqatsi is, based on the Hopi prophecies of life being out of balance.
Mhm.
So the movie just starts, it shows mountains and clouds. It starts to show civilization. There's no words, it's just music and images the entire time. Um, Especially with the Philip Glass connection, this kind of takes from that.
Yeah.
The second
Yeah.
one starts to show you third world countries. The first one, I think, is completely shot in America. A lot of Western scenery and clouds and things. The second one, it shows third world country. That's Pawaskatsi, and the last one is Nakoikatsi, which I'm a cello player, so that one has the best soundtrack. It's still Philip Glass with Yo-Yo Ma playing the cello on top of it, so that's kind of cool. That one it was
Yeah.
2001, has all this digital imagery. I kind of prefer the first one, but yeah, those are, again,
You don't
those
like
are,
all the flash and all the
oh,
animatrix going on?
they're fun, but the first one was just such a perfect movie.
Mm.
And it
Yeah.
just, the resonance of that one seemed to be more. But soundtrack wise, yes, I do prefer the third one. And this is a big tangent, but I do want to tell a story of the soundtrack for Kundun. I think it was about 2002, 2003. I was teaching environmental education. So we'd have kids come and stay at the place, and we were doing like a little dance for them. And
Mhm.
they were coming into, it's like a summer camp, like meeting hall, right? And as they come, I put in the Kundun soundtrack and like blast is at top volume as they're coming in. So to
Mhm.
play they're coming in for a dance, and it's, the throat singing and pipes and stuff. So
Uh-huh.
that
Yeah. Yeah,
was
the
my sense of
music.
humor then.
Yeah, the music is I think music is so core to a good movie plot line. So, I mean, Kundun is like, it's kind of like a slow burn.
There we go. There's another way not to call it boring, I guess.
It's like a slow burn. So it's kind of like, because there's some movies that there's so much going on and it's switching between different plot lines, and you got to go back to this plot line, then you got to go back to that, and it gets a little bit confusing. This one is like a slow burn where it's actually like a gradual um stream of events. So you can kind of follow it, and you can even go get something to eat or go do something, come back, and you haven't missed that much.
Yeah, I
So,
kind of feel like, and this work, maybe this was the intention, that it's almost like all of the plot and the dialogue that's like the side, off to the side.
mhm,
Where I'm matching it with something like Koyaanisqatsi, I feel like the core of this film is watching, the snow blow off a mountain, or the
mhm.
sand mandalas and things like that. That's kind of the focus here. The
Well,
rest
that
of it is just,
is, yeah.
I mean,
Well, 'cause it doesn't have that much dialogue. Like, some movies have so much dialogue, so there's like so much information coming through. You're like, oh, trying to process everything. But Kundun doesn't have that much dialogue compared to other movies. But you're right; it is mostly just imagery, and just kind of it almost feels like the energy of the movie. It almost feels like you actually, if you want to know what it feels like to live in Tibet, in this community in which the Dalai Lama's temple and monasteries are, it's very kind of mellow, and it's very much the energy. So most of the movie, like you said, is just watching them make mandalas, and then blow it away, and then like the snow in the mountains, and then, oh, look at the look at the flag in the wind. And, that's life there on an everyday basis. And I think that's what the director was trying to convey, is the energy of Tibet from the
I never
imagery.
saw 7 Years in Tibet. I don't know if they managed that or not, because that was about the same time. It's especially in the late '90s. Movies always came out in pairs. It seemed Deep Impact and Armageddon, Ants and A Bug's Life, right? So this one is 7 Years in Tibet, and but
Yeah.
I don't know if that. I actually in the late '90s. I don't think I was really cool with Brad Pitt till maybe 12 Monkeys and Fight Club, because he'd done Legends of the Fall, and all the girls in high school were swooning on him instead of you. So it took me a few years to get into Brad Pitt, and 7 Years to Tibet was in the bad spot. So
This is funny. Yeah, the thing that's interesting, because there's so much content in Buddhism. I mean, it's almost 2,600 years, and it's not just one Buddha. There's many Buddhas. Everybody's a Buddha. By the way, Buddha is just another Sanskrit word for Bud, which means to be awake within the matrix, or awake within our holographic reality, that we project through our consciousness. So everybody is a Buddha. It's just a matter of what level of awareness are you creating your reality from. So so out of 2,600 years of information, you have lots of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, teachers, and students adding to the canon what they learn. It's just enormous amounts of information about our metaphysical reality, in which we all create and participate and engage in, all over the place. So it's really hard to just wrap all of Buddhist canon into even like a 3-hour movie, because it's just so much. So you have to kind of gotta take like topics, and then cover that. So Kundun did a good thing in that it took the topic of what a Toku child is, which is basically an old higher energy being incarnating into our reality. So it covered the concept of um reincarnation. It covered the concept that there are old souls that come back to kind of help shepherd and lead people into higher levels of consciousness and beings. And then they come into this reality, and then they're faced with humanity, and humanity is at a lower frequencies. Not everybody is at a higher frequency or at a higher level of consciousness. And so things that seem obvious is not very obvious, and is not very easy to kind of overcome in these denser levels of consciousness that many of these Tokyo people incarnate into. So that's the whole message, is like, okay, so you come in to bring higher energy, higher consciousness into a lower reality, try to help and raise awareness, but then you're dealing with low frequency people who's interested in fighting and killing over a land grab, or trying to get as many, because people are assets too. People are assets. Even if they don't have any money, they are assets because they're free labor, they have potential taxes, they could be used for military, or again labor. So even not necessarily land grab, but the people living within there, for some governments, are seen as assets to them as well. So it so when you have these Toku children coming in, trying to do one thing, and then also having to deal with this other thing, um, that's where, in my mind, the message of the movie Kundun really tried to really focus on, is how do you help these people, along with living your life the best you can, along with dealing with the current situation of the politics or the environment at the time. And sometimes you have to make concessions, and that's what this movie ended up showing, is that the Dalai Lama eventually had he was forced to make the concession and the compromise, and that was to move.
Yeah, one
to
shot that
India.
really stuck out this time, which I didn't even remember the shot, was when he's crossing over to India and looks at the team that's helped him and just sees their
Yeah,
corpses on top of the
yeah,
horses. Like that's coming soon. There's just that's a even bigger concession, isn't it? Like I'm dooming these people by doing this, but it needs to be done. I guess it shouldn't be done that
yeah,
way, but it's the only way, right?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it's sad to see the suffering because they risk their life to help him reach asylum. And and again, it goes back to the pre-life plan because for some people, it may be part of the pre-life plan to kind of rewrite a karma or gain karma merits by helping the Dalai Lama live on and then carry on his work instead of being subjugated in Tibet, which would lead to a completely different, more negative timeline. So even there are players in certain storylines with this whole life thing is a storyline anyways, but there are players in the storyline that we call life who again are not just the main actor or actress, but they are co-stars, they're supporting roles, and they're just happy to do their little supporting role and then, carry on their incarnation elsewhere.
Yeah, I
So,
know some of the. Oh, go ahead.
oh yeah, go ahead.
I was saying, I've heard some of the, I guess, the life between life sort of people,
Uh-huh.
where you would do the contracts, kind of mentioning that, and generally in a life, there's actually like maybe about 5 outs.
Yeah.
If you're just tired, like if you're at age 20,
Yeah.
and there's a few cases last year. I don't really want to get into detail because it's people I know, but a few people died last year very suddenly, and it was just kind of it was weird. It was not COVID, but it was like right at the beginning of the thing, and it's like were they just like peace out?
Yeah, they're just kind of like, oh, I didn't subscribe to go through that, so I'm good.
Yeah, really. I mean, both giant bummers. One of them way too young, the other one pretty young still. Although in his case, especially, it's like that guy lived his life at least. So
Mhm.
sad to see him go. But I'm like, he lived. I think he made it to age 40, and I'm like, he lived all those 40 years. So good for him in that case.
Yeah.
Although of course it'd be good to have a beer with the guy too. But yeah.
Yeah, because there's some characters that we engage with that we just can't help but love them. They have this great personality and they're just such great people. So it is a big miss to
Now
say
the
goodbye to them.
The other one I kind of want to bounce off you, which I haven't necessarily heard somewhere, although this could be a like fully thought out theory, but just in my own, thought experiments, my theory of reincarnation is so, and I'm curious if this fits is it an animist perspective or a Buddhist one or what, but the idea is this is the only life 100%. This is it, right? You're gone, you're gone. Reincarnation would be to various percentages. So what we might call a past life would be someone with like a 99% correlation, whereas there, a rock would have like a 1% correlation with what you're doing, but there's always something in common.
Right. So the concept of reincarnation is just you incarnating into the physical again.
Right.
Reincarnation. Okay. So you just incarnate into physical again. But in Buddhism, especially in advanced Buddhism, basically there is no concept of time because consciousness, the source, God, Allah, the universal mind, whatever you want to call that energy, it is in everybody and it is in everything within creation, within samsara, and also in non-creation within nirvana. So I'm starting to sound like Kundun with
Well,
all this esoteric concepts.
that's the title of
Uh,
this podcast. So
yeah, but anyways, the point is that consciousness is experiencing itself as Matthew Comey, as Von Galt, as other people and other beings in other dimensions, in other realms, in the non-realms, etc. Everything. And your past, your future, your spirit world existence, your existence in another planet, in another dimension, in higher or lower realms, whatever, it's all existing right now, current moment. The only difference is which vantage point you want to look at. So if you're looking at a certain vantage point, then you're going to see and experience that vantage point. Whereas if you change your focus and look at another vantage point, then you're going to see and experience that vantage point. So like if consciousness wanted to see and experience what Matt's doing, it will focus on you, and then it will be in you and experience your version of itself. But humans are the ones that create linearity in time so that we can measure growth. And so it's a tool in which we can use to make a decision on where we want to go next. Kind of like because we have a thought process like, I was there, I didn't like that, I'm going to do this now. So it's time is basically a tool that we have and that we use so that we can make decisions where we want to go. So, but in the grand scale thing, consciousness has no time. It all exists right now. So everything in existence is a parallel reality. It's a parallel existence. Your past, your future, etc.
I found myself more in like daytime meditations of, I guess that's what you're supposed to do, is actually lose track of everything. Because I'm always, I tell people I might do something at a temple in my lunch break, and I'm like, oh my God, I must have just missed 5 classes. And I'm like, oh wait, no, that timed out perfectly. So just like,
Yeah. So it's a balance. It's a balance. That's one of the things is you kind of have the balance being physical to and then the physical responsibilities to also just kind of being present, because it is really easy when you are present in the moment in whatever you're doing to just time what you're just sitting there in the backyard looking at the birds and just laying down on a picnic blanket or something simple like that, and 3 hours goes by and you didn't do anything but just enjoy the present moment. It's really easy to just have
I'm
time
condensing
escape.
those. No, I'm luckily I'm condensing those 3 hours into like 5 minutes. So
Yeah.
because that's the time I have. I have the obligation to show back up at the school I work at and teach a class. So, but
Yeah.
again, I mean, I guess time's speeding up for most of us anyway. But I find
Yeah, we're
myself
in the higher dimensions already, so
really.
yeah,
It's
time
Tuesday
speeds up in the
morning.
higher dimensions.
I start work on Tuesday. I'm like, oh, I'm already back at work. I'm like, well, I'll be out of work pretty soon. And now I'm like, well, I'm going to talk to these people during the work week anyway. And
Yeah.
it really doesn't matter that much. I mean, I definitely love having time just to, roll off with no obligations that day. But
Yeah, remember when we were kids and, summertime, the 3 month, I don't know how long it is in Japan, but in the United States, it's like about a 3 month summer break. It used to be so long, like the summers would just be so long. By the time you went back to school, during the school year, it was like, oh, finally, you're so excited because school is finally here. But now, um, time goes by so fast that the summer breaks is too short. It's like, whoa, school's already here already? I haven't even had a full summer. So technically it is the same time frame in terms of a summer break, but as compared to when you're little to compared to now, it just seems like time is so much faster. And they've actually even shown this in I think it's the quantum computer or something like that, where they show that we actually lost time by I think it was like a second or something, a couple seconds or something like that, where the Earth is spinning so much faster and we actually lost time. So we are actually working with less time than we thought. But I think it feels like we didn't lose seconds but we lost even more time than that. So it makes it even more important to be present in the present moment and spend your time doing the things that you enjoy and love.
I guess it's good I'm condensing some of that time back then with my 5 minute things seeming like 3 hours. But yeah, the rest
Yeah,
of the time it's just flowing along. So
definitely. Yeah. So I mean so if people want to understand the concept of what a toku child is, Kundun is a really good movie just to give a basic idea of a toku. Um and I think like I think I just did a podcast episode with two doctors who, um, I think it was in France or Europe. Sir Francis. Does that sound familiar? He's a saint.
Oh, St. Francis of Assisi.
Yes, of Assisi. Yeah, I thought it was Acelia, but Assisi. Yeah. So Saint Francis of Assisi. So he had a couple monks with him, and I just interviewed two doctors who they do holistic medicine, and one still works in the ER. But in their circles, they met a neurologist, a surgeon in Canada, who has recall, and they when they saw him, they completely remember him, and they said, "Oh my God, Saint Francis!" And they all recognize each other. And he is supposedly the reincarnation of Sir Francis of Assisi that has reincarnated back at this time as a neural surgeon.
Seems like the right thing to do for that. Now, coming up in the email, you were also, I guess that's the Tibetan version, and then there's the whole star seed and indigo ideas, which you mentioned. I guess it's along the
It's the
same
same
lines.
thing. Yeah, it's not new. It's not new. It's not a new concept at all. It's been popularized by certain authors, which is wonderful because it pulled up an old concept in Buddhism that I love. I love that. But yeah, star seeds, indigos, crystal, all these different names for these higher frequency beings who come into a lower reality of Earth to basically help raise the consciousness of the people around them, and still live their best life and enjoy the time that they're here for as well. So it's not just about service, but it's also about living your best life as well. So but there is more of them now. There's a influx of them, more. And in Buddhism, we know this because the earth has raised her frequency. She's in the fifth dimension, and she's been in the fifth dimension since 2555 Buddhist era, which is 2012. So she completed a cycle, and a lot of indigenous tribes already know this, and she's been there since. And ever since then, she's been spinning faster and bringing things up faster and easier. So a lot of people are forced to or are doing a lot of their healing work, um, cleaning out the skeletons in their closet so it doesn't come up and blow up in their face. And then if they do all that, then what is brought up even more is the abundance and the more positive opportunities and experiences that they are manifesting from within themselves because they don't have any low frequency issues that they haven't already dealt with. So but that's basically it. And we have been there, and a lot because we're in the higher dimensions. When you're in the higher dimensions, lower frequency beings, it's really hard for them to incarnate in these higher dimensions. It's not a match of frequency. So it is no surprise for Buddhists. It is for some people in Western culture to see little children coming in, having recall of previous lives, coming in, knowing how to do and complete like math formulas, or just pick up the cello and just start playing a masterpiece at 2 or 3 years old, where they pick something up and they just learn really, really quickly. And so a lot of these kind of um, I don't know, savants is what you call them. We just call them toku. We know what they are and we recognize them, and there's all different kinds. So don't be surprised if your little grandson is the one that's teaching you how to do stuff. So
No, I would say my daughter's turning 12 next week. I'm like, she's more mature than me already, so she's more responsible than I am.
yeah, sometimes you have to. They are still kids, so you got to, kind of, you still have to guide them and watch over them. But sometimes you also have to remind them to, you are still a kid and to have a childhood, because you will be an adult pretty soon. You'll have the rest of your life to adult however way you want, but you won't have your childhood years. So,
Yeah. When you're
yeah.
11, you're 12, and you want to prove that you're already, able to
Hmm.
prove your
Hmm.
sod, and kind of missing that time in your life to a certain extent. But I guess we all do
Yeah.
that to a certain extent anyway.
Yeah, well, that's the one thing about the movie Kundun that I really saw that they try to convey is that, because there was moments where they ask him, "Do you miss your childhood?" Because we kind of took you away from your family, although your family ended up moving into the monastery with them to be with him, but in the movie, but they took him away from his childhood, a normal childhood, and then brought him into the monastery, and then basically started him in the monastic school to teach him everything so that he can lead. So, and one of the questions was, um, did we take away your childhood? Are you happy about your childhood? And the thing is that with all these Tulku children and adults who come in with a higher energy and a higher level of consciousness, in really dense areas, and they're coming in doing fantastic things, um, sometimes they need a break to just have fun, to just, um, be human, to just, you have to save the world. That's why I always tell a lot of my clients who are high frequency, I say, it's not your job to save the world, okay? You could do what you want to do and you're going to have fun doing it because they just can't help but be of service. But at the same time, save some of your energy and time for yourself so that you can enjoy your incarnation as well. So go on that date with that girl and have fun and enjoy the moment that you have with them. Go to the water park and just have fun being a kid. So these I gotta remind them to play, so they take
No,
it
I have
so
to do that with
seriously.
I have to Japanese students. I don't know if it's because I'm a teacher or what, but I'm like, what are you gonna do this week? Study? I'm like, are you gonna do something fun? No. Like, you're missing your time there,
Yeah, 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 exactly. So you kind of have to remind these toku it's okay to play. Okay, there's a balance. You can't play too much. You still have to do your studies, and so that you have the basic foundations to do what you want when you get older, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of them come with a mission. They come with a lot of focus and intention, and they're just really serious little kids. They're like old men and women in baby bodies. But sometimes you got to remember, it's okay to play. It's okay to play. So, but that's what the movie Kundun had some moments where they tried to play with him, but at the same time, they were basically teaching him everything that they know. So he was constantly being taught things. Um, and it's good that in the movie, his brother and his siblings were living in the monastery with him, or close by, so that he can always go and play with his brother and play with his siblings so that he can be a kid. But much of the time he was doing his adult job, which was being the Dalai Lama. So it's a lot of pressure right from the very get-go.
Yeah, I just read, correct me if this is wrong or not, but in these studies, these monks will memorize like 40 pages of script a day or something. And
Yeah,
that
yeah,
stresses
yeah.
me out. I can't even remember songs I write. So
Oh, I know. But that's that, there's been lifetimes where, I mean, I've had lifetimes where I was a monk or I was a nun, and I just basically, and I enjoyed it. I didn't have any it was a very easy life, by the way. I never had any responsibility of taking care. I didn't have any children. I didn't have a marriage I had to maintain. I had no responsibilities besides myself. Just, get up, do art, paint, garden, meditate, maybe do some energy healing here or there with different people coming into the monastery to kind of help with their ailments or illness or whatever they're dealing with. But for the most part, it was a very, very set lifestyle, and I didn't have to worry about paying for my livelihood. I didn't have to worry about where I was going to live, and everything was very set. So it is a very easy life. But now try getting all that knowledge and that you had gained in those other lifetimes, and then now try to be zen when you have little children constantly nagging at you for stuff. Now try to be zen when you have responsibilities at work, constantly asking for stuff, and being a little bit of a pain sometimes. Same thing with trying to balance yourself in spending enough time with your spouse if you're married. So you have all these other responsibilities, um and at the same time trying to be higher level consciousness. So it is the next challenge. So I am not surprised when I meet people who are authors and who are doctors and all these other um, professions, and in their previous lives they were monks and nuns, and they're like, oh, it was such a breath of fresh air when I was a monk and a nun. So
No, I don't know too much about past lives. I'm getting to a point where I don't even want to. But my proof would be I learned how to do basically Tibetan dream yoga, and after
mm,
that, not well, by the way, but it's worked enough that I know I can do it. And then I learned what it was. I like didn't even know what it was, and I was one day, oh, there's this thing, and you're supposed to do this position. I'm like, oh, I've
mm.
been doing that for the past few years. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, we do it natural. We do a lot of this stuff naturally, and that's why I always say you don't really learn anything new. You just recognize what you already know.
Exactly. In this
Uh,
case, it just, that one was, that's kind of I can't. It's not proof for anyone else. It's only proof for me, right? But I'm like,
mhm.
that's for me. It's pretty compelling. I'm like, oh, I knew this already. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, so it's easy learning curve for you.
And I
Um,
do wonder. I've always felt ill at ease until I ended up in the valley I'm in now. I almost wonder if I was like supposed to like here in the past and like just couldn't stay away.
yeah, yeah. The only thing about I mean, obviously Kundun was all about being a Toku child, being born as a Dalai Lama, and basically accepting the reality that you're gonna move to in India to start off that chapter. But the thing that I would really like to see in the Buddhism movies moving forward, and actually the Matrix is very Buddhist origins as well. But I would like to see them explore parallel realities and the holographic universe that we manifest from our consciousness. So I I would like them to investigate in movies more advanced Buddhism, because the basics have been touched in a lot of movies, but there's a lot of areas of Buddhism that hasn't been touched yet, and like the Mandela effect is basically parallel realities, and all the master teachers in all of the Buddhist artwork, and I have it in my current book, Buddhist Mandalas, Christ Consciousness of a Multidimensional Merkabah. They all show the master Buddha um, having multiple heads, multiple limbs, existing in multiple realities, and it's the teachings are in the artwork already, but there hasn't really been any movies that really has explored the concept of fully metaphysics and consciousness and parallel realities creation um, in Buddhism. And I would love to see somebody explore those higher levels of consciousness, because it is happening to people worldwide um, who are in this space of consciousness. And the information has been written about thousands of times in Buddhist canon, but it is very high level and advanced, and people aren't completely ready for that information, but it's always been there. And that's what I
Actually,
write about. I write about that in my books, is the
yeah, I'm
advanced
sitting here
Buddhism.
thinking, there's the Marvel movies, the superhero movies, which honestly I'm kind of burnt out on. But their next thing is actually start. They want to do all this apparently multiverse stuff. So
Yeah, I love it.
you might be getting that quite soon.
I hope so.
They did the WandaVision thing, which was basically like this kind of holographic overlay of a town with everyone, being like kind of controlled and yeah. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I would like them to kind of to yeah, to get into that. And I know they can only, because they have to obviously get some viewership. So if you go too far out from the current level of consciousness of the audience, they can't understand. They're like, that's just too far out. So there has to be some realm of understandability in movie making and creation, but there's a lot of very advanced metaphysics, time travel, holographic manipulation, sixth senses in advanced Buddhism. And like I write books on advanced Buddhism, and it's nothing new. I didn't come up with it. All I'm doing is just documenting what's already on the artwork. It's already in front of us. It's been in front of us the whole time, the teachings and these different concepts of the multiverse and how it reacts to and changes based off the consciousness of the Buddha looking and creating from within it. So all of this is already there. So nobody is really teaching anything new. We're just teaching the same old stuff, but just people aren't ready for those advanced concepts quite yet. The last podcast interview I did with you on the fountain, that one was a really good one and got into the advanced stuff. So I really like that.
But something like this or the fountain or this film, they don't really capture the mass. I mean, they're not blockbusters, are they?
No, because the mass is not ready for that. The
right,
mass
exactly.
the mass is, and that's why most people in Buddhism, and you can go to any temple, you can go to any monastery, anywhere in the world. I've been to many, and that's why most of the basic temples and monasteries basically teach the basics, how not to be a douchebag to each other. The basics, because that's what most people are still learning and need to relearn. Just the basics, so that they don't create out of their unconscious fears and their negative viewpoints. Because
Like I said, mine's so basic, nobody's there.
it's hilarious. Now, and simple is good. Simple is good, but yeah. So a lot of the movies are just the boy meets girl, or right now is the girl meets girl, or or whatever, or the girl meets the boy meets the girl that meets the boy.
You should check out the last season of Star Trek.
I love Star Trek. It's my favorite.
And in the last season of Discovery, they have two non-binary people, one of which is dead and is now a subconscious thing within the other person. Trills, if you're, and it's just like they just like knock down like 8 doors. Probably trying to make a statement, but that's what Star Trek does. So whatever, it can do that.
Yeah. Well, that's that's the whole point of the movies, is to explore these different concepts and then sell it to us to see if we're like, okay, I don't really understand where they went with that one, or I totally understand where they went with that one, just to kind of pique our interest.
Back to the cello, the previous, the lover, who's also now the previous incarnation, could play the cello. So now the living one can play the cello. So again, for the cellist, I'm like, okay, cool. We got a space cello made of carbon fiber. It's great.
Yeah. I know. It's the simple stuff. It's always the simple stuff. But the thing of Kundun, I guess if Kundun had a follow-up sequel, it would be fast forward Dalai Lama in India.
Right.
And everything that's happened ever since then in terms of worldwide insertion of Buddhism in academia. That's really where that's really what has, in my opinion, changed about Buddhism, which I think is wonderful, is that it has become.
There's our connection. It seems our connection is broken down. Give that a second. Editing time. Making a loud noise.
I'm back. You're back.
Yeah,
we're back.
No problem. Yeah, you froze for a minute there, but yeah. Sometimes I get away.
You have to splice it back together again. Yeah, you have to splice the videos together again.
Yeah. It'll be pretty easy. Oh no, mine is one recording, so I just have to take out the dead space.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Where were we? Actually, the same place I was trying to blow the kids' mind by playing them the Kundun soundtrack as they're coming into the dance. I was also they had like some adult program there, and I was in charge of basically leading around a speaker who is a Catholic priest, like relatively high. It might have been something a higher level. It wasn't just a priest, but so I was talking to him, waiting for him to do his talk, and he actually did say, like, even as a Catholic priest, his most spiritual experience ever was meeting the Dalai Lama. So You know,
Yeah.
so making like I'm about to do this speech about Catholicism and stuff, but you know, that's still the deepest experience I've had.
Yeah. Well, you can feel the energy of different, everybody has different energy. And that the energy, you can feel the energy of somebody who has a higher consciousness, because the energy is just very healing. It's also connected to the crystalline consciousness, the Christ light of light, you know.
Right.
So
So
in
he picked up
Buddhism,
on that.
yeah, I picked on it. In Buddhism, the word Christ is basically another word for crystalline, which is a higher frequency of light. It's word is light, the consciousness of light. So we make the distinction. It was the Romans that gave that word to one person, which our lineage completely clarifies. But about Yeshua ben Yosef, and I actually write a lot about Yeshua ben Yosef to clarify Christ consciousness in my second book, Buddhist Mandalas. So um, so if you guys are curious about what is Christ consciousness and how does it relate to a multidimensional Merkabah in your aura field, in your Buddhist mandala, I go over that very extensively in the Buddhist Mandalas book series. And in book 2 is the one where I talk about Christ consciousness and learning about that and connecting to that. So, but anyways, what I was saying before about the movie Kundun, if they did a sequel, it would be about kind of the evolution of Dalai Lama um, being a public figure worldwide and traveling and meeting and promoting research into these studies of Buddhism, just to see, how much is still accurate, what areas need some filling in, because that's all we do is we just research to know more about this greater reality of samsara that we engage in, and keep those records for the next generation to use and create with. 'Cause that's all we're ever doing.
And
So
create things that can be, you know, understood, like you said, with the movies. I mean, you know, the Matrix can be a primer if you're a Gnostic or a Buddhist. And I remember going to you know, growing up in an Episcopal church, they were like, let's break down the Matrix in those terms as well. So
mhm, you did different ways to see it. And it's all, when you go into the higher levels of consciousness in metaphysics consciousness, um, it's all the same thing. It's humans that put labels and boxes and things.
yeah.
It's that specialness of ego that we like to do.
Um,
So
we probably need to wrap up, especially for your time. But I did just want to shout out real quick because we just podcast. I just actually released the podcast last week on Cloud Atlas,
mm,
which I think is definitely one that fits the bill pretty well for deeper concepts of you know, Buddhism or spirit. I mean, you know, again, you can take several tracks with it, but that's one that I definitely would put up there as
Cloud
being a
Atlas.
relatively
I'm going
deep
to add
one.
my podcast to it. Cloud Atlas.
Yeah. That's a mind blower. It's like 6 stories spread across time from like 1848 all the way to like, you know, 300 years in the future.
Oh, you mean the movie? I thought that was a website that the
No, no, no,
podcast
no,
is
no,
on.
no, 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 no. Movie as far as like the more modern
Cloud
one
Atlas.
that gets into
Oh my
those
God.
things.
Maybe the
But
next time we do a follow up, we do Cloud Atlas. I love that one.
yeah. So that's well, I just did that one, but go
Oh,
listen to my podcast on. We talked to Gordon White from Rune Soup
mm-hmm,
for that one, so
mm-hmm,
that
mm-hmm.
was pretty cool. You were just talking about your book, and I guess we do need to wrap up, but make sure to tell folks where to get it, because I haven't read your newest one yet, and I'm about to get a Kindle Unlimited unless there's a better way.
Well, Kindle, and uh, the other two Buddhism book is on Audibles, and it's me reading it. But this one, I'm still working on the Audibles recording of it, so I'm almost done. But if you go to my website, Merkabah Chakras, MERKABA chakras, like your 7chakras.com, that's my website. You can just click on the book links and it'll have all my books there. And then if you just click on the Buddhism book that you're interested in, it'll take you directly to the Amazon page where you can buy it on print, on Audible, on ebook, Kindle, however you want it. But you can also just go to Amazon.com and you can just type in my name, Von Galt, VON, and then Galt is GALT, and it will come up, and just click on the author's name. It'll pull up the author's profile along with all their books as well. So super easy ways to get your copy of the Buddhist Mandalas series and, get yourself up to Christ consciousness and above.
Okay, if that's what I do, I'll be Amazoning it then. I just sometimes authors like are like, oh yeah, but maybe don't do Amazon, do it my way, which I try to make sure they get their platform for that. So
yeah, I just make it simple. I just make it simple. I don't really keep any I don't keep very much stock in store. If you want it, you buy it, and then they'll make it as you buy it after you buy it. So I don't pre-order in advance thousands of copies and then try to sell it. It's not my style.
that's cool. No, I mean, again, I create so much content and I barely know why. So, well, if I don't make music within 2 months, I'll start like going nuts.
Yeah.
Podcasting, I mean, I do, I more and more people seem to be listening, so that's cool. But I think really, if you do want to get all Buddhist about it, I think I'm doing this in part because I'm like working on the throat chakra, right? A few years ago, I definitely felt I was working, lower, and I'm like, I think this is my own method for working on number 5, or well, depending on how you count them, but
yeah, well, and it's also fun to just kind of relate life to movies, because that's really why we watch movies, is to entertain ourselves, but then also kind of peak our life.
Yeah, and that's the whole point of this one. The website released last week, that we were talking about the Twilight of the Archons documentary, and ended up going on for 10 minutes about Bach and Beethoven, which that's kind of what I want to do. I mean, we'll start with this film, and who knows where we'll end up. So,
Well, thank you for having me on your show. Another wonderful episode. So,
and thanks
and
for
another
coming
wonderful movie.
Yeah, you do have to get on the Zoom sometimes to get truly metaphysical with people. Although I am finding more people in my life nearby that I can get a little weirder with. So maybe that's people growing, opening up, and evolving as time speeds up.
That's right.